Hello and welcome to How I Hire. I'm your host, Roy Notowitz, founder of an executive recruiting and leadership consulting firm called Noto Group, where my team and I have spent the last decade helping to build iconic consumer brands, one hire at a time. You can visit us at notogroup.com to learn more. If you have a friend, colleague, or family member who might be interested in this podcast, please let them know they can find us on Apple, Spotify, and whatever podcast platform they listen to. Monica Williams joins me today on the show. She's the Senior Vice President of Digital Products and Operations at NBCUniversal Content Distribution. Monica has been with NBCUniversal for 16 years in a variety of roles, and she's led the business into a new era of digital product innovation. Monica is also the founding member of the private network Chief for their Los Angeles chapter. Chief is the only organization specifically designed for women in senior leadership roles to strengthen their journey, cross-pollinate ideas across industries, and affect change from the top down. Monica and I will discuss her approach to building innovative teams and fostering an intentional culture that empowers and inspires everyone involved. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today, Monica.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, Monica, you have an interesting combination of business, operations, and technology experience within NBCUniversal. Can you share a bit more detail about your career path and how you got to where you are today?
I got my undergrad at the University of Michigan as an industrial operations engineering major. From there, I was early identified through General Electric at the time through one of their internship programs. And this is certainly, GE during the Jack Welch days and very much focusing on leadership development. And I joined GE Aviation into their operations management leadership program. Looking back, definitely very thankful and blessed that I had the experience is really, getting that classical GE leadership and business training.
What a great experience.
Yeah.
And then also being able to be exposed to different leadership styles, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if I were to think about something, like particularly one of my experience, if you think about it as a female Asian American, I think I was 22, 23 at the time. It gave me like a whole new different perspective and, really growing. I would say I can't stress enough on that both the personal and professionally that I was able to really take away from it. And I think the learning, and I was, again, thankful to have early in my career is that ability to adapt, resilience, and really learn to connect with people, among other things. And from there, I landed in a role in engine services still with GE in Southern California, and then ultimately transitioned to NBCUniversal, which was still under GE ownership at the time.
Oh, wow. So that's how you made the transition, but going from the aviation division to the entertainment business, what was that like for you? It must have been a huge shock to the system.
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, I still vividly remember my first week at NBCUniversal, walking around the lot and seeing animals roaming around. And I think this was the time that they were filming Evan Almighty. So, really rightfully so, there was like orangutans and giraffes, but, just thinking how surreal it was. And I was walking on the lot in, one of the largest studio lot in Hollywood and working for this media giant. And background, I grew up in China and then Michigan and really was never really exposed to media entertainment.
Wow.
To even dream that this is something that I would be one day be part of. Right. So I felt super blessed, but extremely nervous because, again, I just didn't have much exposure. So I was certainly anxious.
I can imagine.
Just a lot of the unknowns that comes with it. And to calm myself down, I remember thinking the first week of, hey, I came from making aircraft engines. How hard could this be, right? Boy, was I wrong.
Yeah.
Sitting in meetings the first few weeks on the job, I just remember thinking, are they speaking English? Because I'm not sure I understand a word they're saying.
Yeah.
Wow. Certainly a humbling experience. But I think what allowed, I guess what I call a successful transition from aviation to media entertainment is that I just never shied away from asking questions and spend time and diving into, really to understand.
Yeah, that adaptability from your rotations probably helped significantly.
Yeah, that's right. I think you'll probably start to hear some of the similar themes, and it
Yeah.
continues. From there, I spent a couple years as more of the internal consultant supporting studio operations, and this is certainly the earlier days of digital, and when it was still called new media at the time.
Wow.
So I worked with engineers, build out this new media operation. And when we were done, the leadership team asked me to run it, given my operational background.
Cool.
And this is really when iTunes and Hulu launch and, certainly crazy times and endless hours. But I would say, as cheesy as it sounds, that's the time I fell in love with digital and have purposely decided to stay with it ever since.
It's been amazing. I mean, just the whole subscription-based content explosion and how that's changed everything. And it's still evolving. Like I still don't even really know how to use my TV fully at this point. It's pretty incredible. And you're right in the middle of all that right now.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly hasn't slowed down, right? I think we're absolutely still in the thick of it all, and everything is changing every day. And I felt like that was more of a defining moment in my career where dove in, made the mark, and really grew that business from 0 to 6 million when I left it, and really, expanded to over 200 international licensees. And today I head up digital products and operations for content distribution business unit. So still very much in digital and sort of seeing through all the changes that's happening in our industry.
What is it that your business unit is responsible for?
Our team is responsible for licensing and securing distribution of our network portfolio. So whether that's news, sports, entertainment kits across traditional distributors such as Comcast or Charters of the world to, in the recent years, we've seen virtual distributors entering the space. You're probably familiar with YouTube TV and Hulu.
Yep.
The team I lead is responsible for how people experience viewing of all of our network portfolio content across all these digital platforms. So whether you're watching This Is Us, for example, via YouTube TV on your phone, or watching the Kardashians on the e-app, my team is involved in some shape or form. So what that means is from content delivery, both on demand and linear, through supporting all the different sort of monetization models, whether it's ad integration or ensuring we have the right Nielsen measurement in place, and just building product solutions to ultimately enhance the viewing experience. That's what we do at a very high level. So my world all of a sudden went from nascent to nice to have to now a very big portion of, the way people are consuming media.
Right.
So I think all of this is for us is continue to just keep an eye on the consumer and really follow where the consumers are going. And ultimately, every day what we do and, kind of how we work is really applying that human-centered design approach and just working with our partners to really innovate and bring out, sort of the new product and experience to life.
That's fascinating. So what experiences have shaped your hiring approach and philosophy?
I certainly have a lot of moments both in my personal education, professional career that really taught me humility, courage, vulnerability, compassion, empathy, and perspective. Because I've been fortunate to be part of leadership training early in my career, it really helps me break down the understanding the need of having various personality or leadership or innovation styles, sort of across people, and what you need as a team. That basically all speaks to the point that you really can't be successful with just one type of people.
Mm-hmm.
You really need all styles so you can see things truly through different lenses to be successful. I think that really has been the key, I guess, philosophy that I base my hiring approach on, and just, thinking about whether it's in our day-to-day decisions for a work product or as I'm hiring or onboarding new people. I mean, that's just, part of making sure that we're evaluating not just through our own lens, but consider the lens of others.
What is your approach to making sure that you have those perspectives and that they're being incorporated?
Knowing where we are today, the sort of makeup of the team, where are my strengths and sort of development areas across the team, right? And what problems are we solving for today? And then ultimately, where do we need to go as an organization in the type of problems that we need to solve for? And then that's when I'm, kind of again evaluating my current team, and are there any skills gap? Like what are sort of the areas within the team that I need to sort of consider, and then ultimately helps me think about what should I be looking for to make my team whole, if you will, when I have the opportunity to onboard or backfill. But I do this on a regular basis just to, understand, even if I don't have a headcount I'm trying to fill, but it's good to know your blind spots a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's your role as a leader, to really take a step back and look at it from that 30,000 foot level.
Yeah.
So we had talked in the past about your Six Sigma training and how that informed your approach to hiring. And that was really interesting. Can you share a little bit more detail around how that knowledge has been helpful or informative?
Yeah. I mean, in fact, I think, just even thinking about the hiring approach, that's probably a huge influence of Six Sigma, because it's really a way of thinking. It's a way to problem solve. So a lot of the Six Sigma philosophy teaches you certainly your baselining. You have to start off with the baseline. You have to understand where you're trying to go, and then, map out what's sort of stopping you from getting there, right? So like really kind of understanding, your today, where you're trying to be, and, looking at the gaps and how do you what are the potential improvements that you can make to get there. And then you have to build control around it. But that's really the Six Sigma, I would say, approach. And I would say I bring that into every day, whether it's hiring or, just kind of my everyday problem solving. That's certainly, I would say, it's kind of almost like the fabric of who I am a little bit. So when I'm looking for people, it's less about the specific experience, but versus somebody who is really at the core not afraid to change, not afraid to challenge the status quo, and willing to learn, because, everything is so different and we're always and constantly learning. And last but not least, I would say the other part that I would be looking for as part of that hiring process is looking for somebody who is a great problem solver. It's somebody who can really break down the problem and attack it, and not afraid to attack it, right? So I think ultimately, I was able to abstract from the exposure to various leaders, and, kind of building through and into kind of my philosophy and kind of how I currently think about building the team and the organization.
So the premium digital content technology and subscription business models are evolving. Generally, what do you look for in candidates, and how do you assess that?
I would say the pace of change has just gone exponential, especially in those last few years. So for me, what's important is less about finding people with specific experience to what we need, versus really finding somebody who is really not afraid to change, that is willing to learn, and ultimately a great problem solver, meaning they're able to, see the problem, connect the dots, and break it down to be able to, sort of solution. I think that's really, for me, is, kind of think about what I look for in candidates in general, and that ultimately would provide that great balance for the rest of my organization, so we can really bring out everyone's strength and be able to successfully execute for the business.
I think that's really interesting, because when LinkedIn started to become really prolific and people had the opportunity to dig and find people with exactly the experience or the type of job that they're looking to fill, and bringing those people to the table for interviewing and hiring, now I'm seeing a more broad approach where people are, like you're saying, looking for those core competencies, such as learning agility and communication and adaptability and curiosity, and the things that are the underpinnings of success. And so when you're looking to fill a position, are you looking outside of the industry sometimes, or also just like considering different profiles in a sort of measured way? Or what's your approach or strategy to actually looking at the talent pool?
Certainly having media entertainment experience is nice to have, but really there's just so much transferable skills that we really focus on, right? And ultimately, as for me, it's really thinking about, can somebody have proven that they're able to break down a problem? Are they able to think logically, and kind of understanding the business need, understanding the consumer, to create an experience and, continue to innovate and solve. So I think that's a lot of what the approach that my team has been, and or for me personally as we're onboarding. But even now, we're even more mindful of, from a more diversity, equity, and inclusion standpoint, of like geographical location and, college experience. I mean, a lot of this is really pushing for, let's look for really the true skill sets, because then we're able to really broaden the talent pool and the access to really bring people into an organization to, again, give you that broader, different perspective. I think that's a lot of kind of where we're shifting, is focusing on how do we, again, broaden and just ultimately find talent, and just sort of we can, all be successful together as the business continue to evolve.
Right. And so, what are the business drivers or culture variables and dynamics that you take into consideration? I mean, NBC Universal is a big company, but you're also trying to hire people who are really agile and entrepreneurial and innovative. So what do you take into consideration when you're assembling your teams in that regard?
I think for me, it's a huge emphasis on the human side of things. I mean, really assembling the team, when I do that, like learning who they are and all that they are, right? And as a leader, for me, is what can I do and how can I help to unlock the talent that they are and that they have and all their strength, and just so that we can maximize their potential. And again, it's someone who's really not afraid to change as things are moving and shifting so quickly. And, that creative thinking is truly important. And in the role that we're in, I think a lot of folks would say, well, you're not in a creative role. So what do you mean in terms of creativity and innovation? And I would argue, you can really be creative and innovate and strategize in any role that you're in, right? So and I think a lot of this is understanding how everything fit together, how you individually contribute to the bottom line, to the business drivers, and understanding how you fit in. You can then really think about, okay, what can you do in your day-to-day to innovate, to solution differently, and just think outside the box. I think a lot of that is my approach in assembling the team, and always, what I emphasize on the team, to take their personal experiences and, again, why we're sort of looking to even broaden the access so that we can get talents from all walks of life, because that ultimately is just going to make our product, our process that much better and that much stronger.
So understanding who they are and how they contribute, and then looking for, that diversity of perspective and opinion and experience, whether it's personal, professional, or wherever they might get that. So when you're trying to interview and understand the human, that person that you're trying to evaluate or hire, do you have any questions in your arsenal of interview questions that you like to ask, or is there a tough question that you utilize to sort of help you understand that?
One is, what's your biggest fear versus what's your biggest failure? And this is something that I just, every time I think it's really interesting to hear more about the individual and sort of how they think, and, really getting into a little bit of who they are. For me, and it's someone who is not necessarily afraid to failure, right? Because we all make mistakes. We're all human. And I think that's, again, is the emphasis on that, where, it's okay. And I would say, especially in the role that we're in, we're developing product, it's okay to make a mistake, but you don't let your ego get in the way, right? So not afraid to make mistake, but not afraid to change or have an idea and chase it, right? I think all of this, I think a lot of this could come through is how they're describing their biggest failure and their biggest fear. I think a lot of this is what I listen for. I don't want somebody who's shy away from a good idea just because they're afraid. I want someone who is able to continue to, challenge the status quo and change up the process. But if it's not going in the right way, but also be okay to call it, and it's part of the learning, and let's move on. I think those are the things that I think I listen for and look for.
I've heard people call that concept failing forward.
Yeah, if I just even think back in my life, I mean, I think every time I do something right, I don't think I learned half as much as if I actually did something wrong.
Yeah. Is there anything a candidate can say in the interview that sparks a judgmental hot button, or something that just really turns you off in terms of their candidacy?
Yes, I have one. I would say it's probably a pet peeve of mine.
Can't wait to hear.
Making up answers when they clearly don't have any idea of what it is or what the question is asked of them.
Mhm.
I much rather someone come out and say, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar, but I'm happy to dig in and learn and come
Right.
back to you with the POV or the insights
Right.
to, come back to the question versus trying to BS their way through a
Right.
little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely a one that it's a hot button for me.
Yeah. I think that's good interviewing advice for candidates in general is just, you don't necessarily have to have all the answers. And sometimes I think in the interview process, people feel like that's what they need to do to ace the interview. And I think people much rather would know what your true strengths and weaknesses are because then it really helps them understand you better. And it's not necessarily a negative thing.
Yeah.
It actually helps the stuff that you do know and understand become more solid or believable.
Yeah. No, I mean, emphasis on the human, right? Like
Yeah.
we can't all know everything, but
So you're such a positive person. And, how does that tie into your approach to enabling or empowering the team to reach their full potential?
for me personally, I believe really through my core that our job as leaders to create the best culture in order to achieve the best performance output. So I spent personally a lot of time to cultivate and build and having that right culture in place. And I would say it's one of the things that I'm most proud of about my team, and not, certainly the work that we do and we create and sort of produce on a daily basis, but really the family culture that we have. It's something that, I spend a lot of time on, and really making sure that we have this family like culture from onboarding to your daily interactions. I mean, really think about what you would do for your family. You help each other no matter what. You're
Right.
there for one another no matter what. And that's really sort of the approach that I have working with our team, really having the space and for everyone to know that we lean on each other. We're there to challenge one another, and we're there to, learn from one another. And that's how we sort of come together. And especially, it's been challenging times, right, in the last couple of years, but also as the business evolves and everything is moving so quickly. But we're there to support one another through the new way of thinking. But, also most importantly, we got to have fun. That's all part of it.
Everyone has sort of the interest of the company or good intentions around what they're trying to accomplish as a team, as a group.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. Is that something at NBC that they talk about, like this family concept, or is that something that you brought into the mix?
NBCU certainly has a great culture ultimately and overall, and every organization is a little bit different, but based on the leadership. But I would say yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a very culture first kind of environment. I probably put even more emphasis on that just because I'm such a believer. To me, it's really leadership culture. I've always said it's like the two sides of the same coin, and I just spend a lot of time as part of who I am to make sure that we have that. But yeah, overall, I mean, it's very much across the board support in almost every single business unit to have very similar culture throughout.
That's great. How has the pandemic changed or influenced your team structure or your approach towards achieving the business goals?
I'd say our goals and objectives, really haven't changed through this last year, through the pandemic and, working remote. I have been challenging my team to think about, I mean, a lot of this is, going back to what I mentioned earlier is what we do is we really have to focus on where the consumers are going. So think about, how did this last year change some of the consumer behaviors, whether they're watching TV or, the sort of the thinking about the experience that we have and build and where is it going to. I think a lot of that is what we're trying to think through. Did it shift or change, in one direction or not? Did it accelerate in one direction or not? So I think those are things that, it's certainly very top of mind for us. And, another thing I'll mention is sort of what has changed, that is really how do we connect with people, and going back to, because I, spend so much time thinking about the culture, and that certainly being remote and not in person has made it challenging
Yeah.
this last year. And especially, if you think about the year that we've had and everything that sort of happened around us, for me as a leader, to really think about how do we be even more compassionate and lead with empathy, and how do we communicate more
Right.
because we're not together in person. So it's like really trying to be even more intentional in trying to see what's going on behind the screens with somebody, and what's happening in their lives. So I think we spend a lot of time to just make sure that the team knows we have a safe space to listen and, to share, to be heard. And we're here to, really how you could talk to your family is how we can talk to the team. And that's, again, we, want to make sure that also, given this last year with, everybody sort of blending their personal and professional and kids at home and, all the struggles that we all sort of have gone through together, but, also remember to make sure that taking the time to take care of yourselves, right? So I think it just, it's a lot of that certainly has changed. And, for us to, especially for me as a leader, to be even more mindful and to make sure that we're spending the time to stay connected and save the time to have fun.
Yeah.
Even though it's virtual right now, but I'm
Yeah.
hopeful that, that's sort of changing. So
There's definitely something missing by not being together as a team, but I think it's been proven this year that even for key leadership roles, it can be done remotely.
yeah,
It's going to be interesting to see to what extent that sticks and how that evolves in the years ahead as we come out of this. And same thing with the consumer trends and things. I mean, I think there's a lot of new habits and different things happening, but a year from now, I wonder what elements will be forever changed and what things will sort of snap back.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I really hope as sort of the society and the global workforce, we can take some of the learnings from last year and keep the positives, right?
Yeah.
And certainly we definitely miss being together in person, but the work that we're able to do and provide people with the flexibility that they need to, whether it's taking care of their mental health, taking care of their physical health, taking care of their family members, or be closer, be able to have dinner with their kids every day. I'm like, I hope we're able to still maintain some of that and what we're able to accomplish this last year. And as we move to sort of the new way of working. But yeah, I'm personally excited and optimistic on that front.
Certainly changed the recruiting landscape. It's
I'm sure.
really interesting right now. So what are you currently working on that you're excited about? I know you have probably a million projects and lots of cool things going on, but is there anything you can share with us that you're particularly excited about right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one that's really consuming most of our times right now is just gearing up for Olympics.
Yeah.
As it's getting closer by the day.
Yeah.
I think for us, when we got the news that Olympics was postponed last year, it certainly was like a bit of a gut-wrenching experience. And my
Yeah, I
whole
can
team and
imagine.
I, we've been working so hard to prepare and produce and, across the board, right? Across NBCU, I mean, everybody sort of in some shape or form, there's an element of how do we support Olympics. But for us, really, it almost gave us the extra time to think bigger and provided the ability for us to go bigger and producing some of the new experiences. So
That's great.
now that it's inching closer, we are building and testing some of these new experiences, and they're no longer a concept on a page.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see that. But at the same time, it's certainly giving me a lot of anxiety, but I'm super stoked about it.
Well, given the landscape, I'm sure being able to have those virtual and content experiences are really important now.
And also, I would say, Chief launched in LA last year. For those of you who's not familiar with Chief is a private network designed specifically for women leaders, anywhere from, rising VP level through CEO level, really to strengthen their experience in the C-suite and cross-pollinate power across industries and really be able to sort of affect change from top down. So I'm personally excited and thrilled to be part of this amazing organization and learning and supporting women leaders and building the community together across all industries. So that's another thing that I've, recently been part of and, super, super excited about.
That's awesome. From the first time I connected with you, you were just so gracious with your time and so helpful. And I know I'm really excited to follow your continued career success and career path. And in the show notes, we'll put some links to Chief and that organization, as well as NBC Universal and things that people can connect with within your organization if they're interested in learning more.
That's great. Awesome.
Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to How I Hire. Visit howihire.com for more details about the show. How I Hire is available on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and all major listening platforms. If you're enjoying the show, please let your friends and colleagues know about us. How I Hire is created by Noda Group Executive Search. To find out more about Noda Group, visit nodagroup.com and follow us on LinkedIn. This podcast was produced by A.O. McLean, LLC. To learn more about their great work, visit aomclean.com.